So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Pete Lauer. I'm an independent mobility consultant in Chicago, and I'm thrilled to be moderating a conversation about a very exciting program, Meet Me on Milwaukee. So I'm not going to talk very long up front because everyone here came to see everyone sitting. But I do want to do two things first. Give everyone a chance to introduce themselves, and then give a little bit of context and some slides about where this kind of program comes from and how it landed on Milwaukee Avenue in Wicker Park. So going down the line, I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves, your role, and share one happy memory from Meet Me on Milwaukee. So Dave, we'll start with you. Hey, flip up to talk.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is David Smith, Assistant Commissioner at the Chicago Department of Transportation. And I've been working within CDOT for the last 15 years, really focused on making our city more comfortable, safer, more accessible for everybody, regardless of your mode of transportation. So particularly for people walking, biking, getting to transit, taking transit. I've worked really closely with my good friend Alderman Spata on a whole bunch of projects. Had worked with Pam from the Chamber on some improvements along Milwaukee Avenue, and was really excited to work with them to make Meet Me on Milwaukee happen. I guess for me, the happiest memory of the event was just seeing how successful the event could be with very little to no programming. It was just really about getting the cars off the street, letting people feel the asphalt under their feet, and just get out, enjoy the local businesses, enjoy the community. And it didn't need a whole lot of stages and entertainment and bouncy houses, et cetera. It was just really about get out and see what the public way feels like when you're unimpeded by automobile traffic.
It's the flip side of touching grass. It's touching asphalt. My name is Daniel Spata. I serve as alderperson for the 1st Ward up in Logan Square, Wicker Park, and Westtown. And I will say my favorite memory was experiencing it with my daughter. One at the time, now 2 daughters, but to get to bike next to her in the street is an experience I never would have been able to have otherwise. And I think that felt like the overall vibe, energy of this event is people having experiences that they would never have otherwise, but for what we did.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Pamela Maass, President and CEO for Wicker Park Bucktown Chamber of Commerce. We do small business assistance for Wicker Park and Bucktown. We have about 1,400 businesses that we support. And Milwaukee Avenue is not a mystery to me. We produce Wicker Park Fest. So it's very normal in my mind to close that street down, but as Daniel said, having it be completely empty, and as Dave said, carless, it's definitely a different vibe. We also produce Wicker Park Farmers Market, so we're used to seeing lots of families and dogs and commerce all happening together. So my favorite memory from the series is actually prior to it happening, I just kept having this vision of a little girl roller skating with ribbons in her hair. And the very first person I saw roller skating was a man with very short shorts on. But later that day, I did see the little girl with ribbons in her hair, and my heart just burst out of my chest. But also the feedback from the businesses made my heart burst out of my chest. So with that, I'm going to hand the mic over.
Hi everyone, I'm Amanda Kezios. I am the owner of Mojo Spa. I make handmade beauty products to help you feel and look good. I have been in Wicker Park for 25 years, so I'm kind of a legacy business. I've seen Wicker Park go through many changes. 4 years ago, I started a small business initiative to help advocate for small businesses because after COVID, I saw a lot of them close and have a hard time pivot. So I'm very excited to be here today to kind of give you a perspective of how this is beneficial to small businesses like mine. My favorite moment was actually seeing Spata bike by my store, because normally you do not see the alderman on a daily basis. And he was so happy, everybody was waving, And it was just a wonderful community vibe that you don't experience on a daily. Especially now, people's morale is at an all-time low. So having something like this that can make people feel good and just be happy and just interact with people that they don't normally interact with just made me so grateful for this activation.
All right, thank you all. So first, a little bit of context. What happened in Milwaukee Avenue last year wasn't invented in Chicago. It's actually part of a global movement that's roughly 50 years old at this point. So that started in Bogota, Colombia in 1974. The very first Ciclovia was a one-day demonstration. A handful of activists wanted to show streets without cars. And 2 years later, it became public policy for the city of Bogota. Now today, the model is spread across Colombia with 36 cities, running their own programs with support from the National Ministry of Sport. There are hundreds of kilometers of streets and millions of participants every weekend. So I think that's the most important part about Ciclovia is that it's not an event, it's infrastructure. It's a recurring public good that the country invests in Colombia and in the same way that it invests in parks or libraries or education. Another international example is Muévete en Bici in Mexico City. So they launched their version in 2007, starting with about 6 miles of roads, but today it covers 34 miles of roads all around Mexico City. It draws up to 80,000 participants per Sunday, every Sunday, the first 3 Sundays of every month. Millions of people total every year. So here are some examples in the US, both beginning in 2010. Now we think of Los Angeles and Atlanta as very car-friendly cities, but keep in mind that these events started as one-offs back in 2010. Today, Ciclovia has 9 events planned for 2026, and Atlanta has 8. I think that's important because they didn't scale through a big push one time, but instead there were community partnerships with local businesses and public agencies. That's the same pattern that we'd like to hear about in a minute here. So Wicker Park. So Milwaukee Avenue Wicker Park is about 2/3 of a mile between the Damon and Division Blue Line stops. It's one of the densest, most walkable commercial corridors in the city with hundreds of small businesses, including vintage stores, restaurants, boutiques, and nightlife. We often see the phrase buy, sell, trade on storefronts in Wicker Park. It's a useful shorthand for the kind of commerce that this neighborhood is held on to. There's a lot of secondhand, there's a lot of independent ownership, and many of these stores exist as a kind of community project. So on a personal note, I came of age at just a little bit too late to participate in going to the record store every Saturday morning and flipping through records. I was 15 when Tower Records declared bankruptcy. But Wicker Park still has that. There's many record stores. There's so much physical media. And on 3 Sundays last fall, it really felt like the entire community came together to experience that. So that brings us to our program. Meet Me on Milwaukee took place from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on 3 Sundays, the last Sunday of August, September, and October in 2025. There are 3 more Sundays planned for 2026. Importantly, there were no program stages, as Dave mentioned. There was no ticketed area, no grid of vendor booths like the typical street fests. Milwaukee Avenue and the businesses were the program. The goal was to celebrate what's already here. So that brings us to our panel. So the broader question that I would like to talk about today is what it took to make this happen in 2025 and how we can grow the program, whether that's more Sundays or spreading to other neighborhoods throughout the city. So a quick note on the format. I've prepared a bunch of questions for specific people, but after any individual answers, please, everyone else, feel free to jump in. You don't have to wait for me to call on you. This is a conversation, not a press conference. So we have until 10:45, and I'd like to earmark the last 10 or 15 minutes to cover audience Q&A. So I'll start with Pam. When you were making the case for member businesses in 2025, what was the pitch and how did the reality of Meet Me on Milwaukee compared to that original promise?
So we started this with our board of directors. Ironically, in 2024, we soft pitched it, and everyone literally unanimously across the board was like, right, it doesn't take much to convince people to take a street fest area and then just remove all the programming, mostly the expenses, and just have the street be open. It wasn't a hard sell. And then as far as getting businesses recruited, I mean, I think we put up the first flyer and everyone inundated our office with questions. So as far as business recruitment or what did it take, there was no magic sauce at hand. It was literally just announcing that we were doing it.
That's really exciting to hear that kind of support. So Amanda, can you describe what a typical Sunday morning for Meet Me on Milwaukee would look like from your front door and how that compared to any other Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, the thing to really remember about this is we do get a lot of foot traffic, as Pete said. We are a really busy corridor. But the biggest difference with this was that it was all the locals that came out. It took them out of their houses because a lot of them are shopping online after COVID, and it brought them back into their neighborhood and reminded them, hey, we've got a lot of great places just right behind your back door, and to not forget about us. So it was great because I got to see a lot of locals I hadn't seen in a long time. And I also got to meet new people in the neighborhood that are like, I walk by your store, I've never come in, that came in and were like, this is amazing, I want to come back here. And then they bring their friends from out of town. So something like this for a small business is the gift that keeps on giving. It gets people just involved more in the community. Because I think we forgot that with COVID, and people just are shopping online in their homes, not really wanting to go out. And it really brought everybody together, but also, too, people meeting each other that wouldn't have normally met, like with doggy parents and like kids, very family friendly. So it also allowed people to meet their neighbors as well and interact at that level.
Thank you. So this is a question for Alderman Spata. So you described a lovely moment with your daughter the day of, but could you describe if there was any specific piece of feedback from a constituent or a business that made you feel like the event was really worth it?
I feel like it was a day, like it was 3 full days of feedback. Like it was, I mean, it's always very happy when people come up to you and say, this is something I always want to experience. It was like the overhearing was almost like more of my favorite, you know? Like, I remember being in line at Crossroads and somebody like just standing behind me saying like, this is amazing. Have you ever seen them do this before? And I was like, oh, don't take credit. Like, just do your shopping and like, get out of here. But like, it felt like universal. And there's like few things you're gonna do as an elected official that feel universally popular. Like, I can tell you that for a fact. But this was one of the few. Yeah.
Thanks. So Dave, from where you sit at CDOT, what made Meet Me on Milwaukee different from other events and programs that the city handles?
Well, like I said in the beginning, I think the big thing that separated this event was really just the focus on community, the focus on street, local businesses, and less so on over-programming and trying to like fabricate a reason for people to be there. The people, when we started talking about this in probably 2024, the idea was like, let's really show people what our streets and sidewalks can look like when it's focused on people and not just about storing and moving cars. And if there's any street where this is warranted and deserved and we thought would be celebrated, it's Milwaukee Avenue, and it's this section within Wicker Park. And I think the universal consensus was that it was a success and that it made sense and that people are demanding more of it. And so we want to do more of it on Milwaukee. We want to do more of it on other streets throughout the city. So I think that was the big difference from the city side. I also want to just really highlight the importance and the critical part of the partnership between CDOT, the Alderman's office, the Chamber of Commerce. That's how these types of events are really successful, and that provides an easier path forward for replicating this event, in other places around the city.
Now, I will add one thing to that, which is you've heard us talk about, we started talking about this in 2024, and then Pete saying, Meet Me on Milwaukee happened in 2025. So why the lag? And it really was like a permitting kind of issue, because there's not really a permit that exists for what we wanted to do. And I think part of the challenge was this back and forth between like CPD, CDOT, DCASE. Like we would say, we want to close the street. They're like, what do you want to close the street for? We want to close the street for people. Okay, like that's, like what is that permit? And I remember like it ended up being a DCASE permit, the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, and there's all these boxes that you have to check, like where's the security gonna be? Where are the stages going? What are the speakers? What are the bands? And I remember sitting down with Leah Kennedy from my office being like, we can give them a blank permit, like if that's what they're asking for. Like, I mean, even with the Type 3 barricades that we put up, those were purchased through the ward. We had volunteers literally like screwing those together on a Saturday. My wife was asking me, why does our credit card show us a $5,000 transportation warehouse bill? And I'm like, well, let me tell you what we're doing.
Pam, could you jump in on the same question? What did the permitting process look like from your perspective?
As the aforementioned Wicker Park Fest producer, I'm used to spending hours and thousands of dollars with a professional production team getting through the permitting process. So when Daniel first mentioned this to me, I was like, that's going to be fun. You're going to take care of the permit, or I am. I started. I didn't get very far. So we had to switch gears, right? I mean, anytime you start something new, if you're not creating something that exists in a box, you have to think outside the box and get the right people to the conversation to create the pathway forward. And I think that is honestly why it took from 2024 to 2025. In addition to the permitting process and how do we get the right people to support this initiative that is really quite new for Chicago. We had seen outdoor dining, we had seen street festivals, but we hadn't seen this middle make way for people, but in the street, close the whole thing. That was new. So it definitely was interesting. And I think the switching gears and figuring out insurance and how is all of this going to come together. And luckily, we have a very supportive police district with District 14 because without their help, this truly would not have happened. Getting that street closure, it's massive. We go from all the way from the Damon Blue Line all the way to the Division Blue Line. How commonly have you seen a street close between two train stops? That's huge. So having the support of our local police station, honestly, was, I think, the other essential piece to bringing this together. Yeah.
I was just going to say, to Pam's point, like, while the event was very simple, we just simply closed down the street. You know, the run up to it, the coordination and making it happen was very complicated. It took multiple city agencies to make it happen. Many meetings, trials and tribulations, and a lot of efforts from the community, the ward office, and departments across the city.
So this is a question for Amanda. If another business owner in a different neighborhood said, hey, I heard about this awesome event, I want that on my block, how do I get that? What would you tell them?
I would actually tell them they would be very supportive. One of the things that I did was when Pamela first told me about the idea, I was like, how can I help? Because I realized how massive and how successful it could be for small businesses just to bring more awareness in there. I would tell them to work with their local chamber. The biggest thing is it's free marketing for small businesses because not only are you getting your locals, but they remember you after this. And then they bring their friends that are visiting out of town because they want to show them the special places in the neighborhood. And those special places are created by the small businesses, right? We kind of create the vibe of the neighborhood. So I've become a very big advocate of introducing initiatives like this in other neighborhoods because small businesses right now are really suffering. The cost of doing business for us is just so high. So to have an event at this level where there isn't any distraction, like, you know, we all said this, right? It's just people walking, enjoying the neighborhood and getting to know what's already there. You don't have to compete with the stages. You don't have to compete with other vendors. It's all open so people can cross the street easily and go from one place to another. And everybody is just in such a positive mood. It's family friendly. One of my other favorite moments was in October, instead of doing a normal haunted house, they had a ghost in training for the kids. And the families absolutely loved it. They came out in droves. The kids were super happy and came in. So the kind of just small activations that they had within this initiative were really outside the box, and I have to give kudos to Pamela and her team. She's like our fearless leader with stuff like this. But getting more involved with the chamber is very helpful because they are going to be representing you to get something like this activated. I knew there was a lot of stuff that had to come into play, so I do hope that now other neighborhoods can have an easier time getting the permit so it doesn't take so long, because that is one of the things I've realized in my small business initiative is everything takes longer and patience is a virtue. So I would really highly recommend that a small business get involved to do something like this in their neighborhood for sure.
Thank you. So this is a question for Daniel, but really goes to everyone. What would you like to see from the event in 2026 and beyond?
Ooh, it's the and beyond question. That's the challenge. For this year, I want to figure out how we can be as successful or more successful, but logistically more efficient. And so, like, what I mean by that is, like last year, it really was like a 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. affair because, again, like we're renting a U-Haul, we're picking up the U-Haul, we're getting the Type 3 barricades, we're bringing them out to the right location, setting them up, volunteers there all day, then take down the Type 3 barricades, get them in the U-Haul, bring them back to the ward yard, Like, just the staffing capacity and the volunteer capacity was what made it so difficult on the governmental side. So, like, this year, for example, like, we have 2 interns from UIC whose, like, sole purpose in the office is making Meet Me on Milwaukee more successful. Like, one on community engagement, one on, like, logistics and liaising with the small business community. I think that's going to be beneficial. We've been talking about, like, rather than, like, having to haul these out, like, from a ward yard of their businesses, that would help us keep them on site. Because it was beautiful, and if there was a doubt of whether we could do it again, was just because it's like 3 days of, like, full-on first ward staff time that goes into making it successful. And I think we're in a better position. And beyond, like, factually depends on what my life looks like next February. So I'll talk about and beyond probably next March.
Fair.
I just wanted to add one thing because I talked to a lot of small businesses after each of them Meet Me on Milwaukee, and one of the things they had commented is they would love to see this, like, expand for beyond just, like, 3 months. Now, I know, there was businesses who are like, let's have it every month last day of Sunday. I was like, I don't know if that's possible, but as we start to feel more comfortable with it, expanding it more, I think could really help. I think the other thing for expansion, and we started to do this for the last one, is creating small activations within the small businesses where we're more involved, because the first one, unfortunately, because this was so new, a lot of small businesses had no idea that it was even happening. So one of my biggest things was getting the awareness out there so the second and the third one, they could be involved and they could maximize it more. But if we can coordinate, and this is one of the things I am working on, is to get smaller activations where we can coordinate between small businesses where you start here, then you go here, and then you go here. So we're all doing it together, because as small businesses, we're stronger together, especially now, and we all have social media, so we can put it together. So there is a lot of room to grow if you can bring in the small business element. And I mean, they're motivated because it was very successful. Our sales were great, but more importantly, we got to connect with the local community again, so they don't forget about us. And those are some of the things I think we can expand to.
Businesses reached out, I think, January 1st. Are we doing this again? We're going to mark our calendars. We're going to market our entire year around these 3 days, which is incredible to hear. I think one of the biggest things that our organization is looking forward to is repeatability, right? Again, simplifying. We already have Wicker Park Farmers Market running for hours by the time we start this event. So for our team, we already have an event happening in the neighborhood. We're just going to another space that we already know and kind of rinse and repeating. But repeatability for others. I think one of the biggest things that was in our favor for this particular footprint, because we didn't start with a small Meet Me on Milwaukee, we took the whole thing. That was a choice. But having a footprint that already has a known street closure workaround, Milwaukee Avenue, we're rerouting buses. We had lots of bikers coming through. For Wicker Park Fest, they have to get off. But for Meet Me on Milwaukee, we tried to create this different option where they could actually stay on their bikes, but stay in the center. Flip the scene, where the bikes move to the center of the road, the cars are gone, and pedestrians can take where the bikes are. So we kind of flipped the script a little bit, and I think that really helped to create something that was a little more repeatable moving forward. But we've had a lot of other organizations reach out, a lot of other small businesses from other communities reach out and say, how do we do this? And the number one thing that I could recommend, and I think Daniel's office also shared this, is pick something that already has a known street closure process, because rerouting all the traffic, the bikes, it takes a lot. And if you don't already have that city rerouting, I'll let Dave speak to that part, but rerouting is a big component of it, that if you're a tiny little organization, start small, but take a footprint that already has had any kind of street closure experience, or that just doesn't have buses, because that will save you a ton of trouble.
Can I just speak on that real quick before
Yeah.
Dave? It's like, just to like add to that, like the fact that you guys do Wicker Park Fest every year made it so much easier, because like CDOT then, like they were asked like, what's the street closure map look like? And it's like, Wicker Park Fest, copy, paste, and like, yeah, we knew exactly what we were trying to do because you all had done it successfully for such a long time.
A couple of things that just came to mind about that I was really excited about with this year. You had mentioned how the small activations picked up over the course of the 3 events. And that I thought was really cool to see that the first one, people were just figuring out what this thing is. And by the third one, business owners and community members were just showing up and doing things at their own, what they wanted to, how they wanted to do it. That was really cool. And then you'd also mentioned like the social interaction part of this. And I think that is a really important part of why we do these complete streets, infrastructure projects, these types of events. It's about getting to where you're going safely and efficiently, and quality of life and economic development. But it's also about bringing the city together in a time where the city is, and people just generally are quite divided. And you can come out to Meet Me on Milwaukee and not be distracted by, a Pearl Jam cover band or a hot dog vendor or something, and you really just get to spend time with the community and get to know each other and local businesses. Going forward, from the city side, what I would like to do is really to capture the moment even better than what we did last year and document the success of the event. We did have some surveys out there and people out there collecting feedback, and it was all very positive, and the stats were amazing, and I know businesses, reported very successful sales and engagement with consumers. But I really want to document the moment so that we can build the momentum, not just to do more of these on Milwaukee, but to really create a program so it is more efficient and more accessible for commercial corridors across the city.
Thank you. So speaking specifically to that about documenting the success, I know there was a lot of data that came out about extra foot traffic, extra sales tax revenue. Pam, do you think there's an opportunity to present an economic case for this such that it wouldn't make sense not to do it again?
Absolutely. So our organization is very lucky. We have a subscription to Placer AI. So we were able to pull some of that kind of data right away after the event and follow up and see some of the initial economic impact, the foot traffic, the lingering spots, which if you've ever had access to Placer or seen reports from it, it's pretty crazy. It's little Big Brother terrifying. But the joy of it is that you really get to make smarter decisions for everything that you do moving forward. And that definitely means feedback from the businesses. But when it comes to that financial impact, the economic impact, which is, again, the financial vitality is the entire point of a chamber of commerce, is to make sure that those businesses get support, get connected. There's absolutely a case in the data. I mean, there's no way around it. Having 15,000 people show up on Milwaukee Avenue per Sunday is pretty awesome. I mean, we didn't hardly spend a dime to make all of that happen, which makes me really think about Wicker Park Fest again, spending like $500,000, and this spent basically like a couple thousand. So yeah, I mean, there is absolutely the proof in the pudding with the numbers.
Thanks. So Amanda, if another business owner, if you were trying to explain this and they had never heard of it and they didn't know what it was, how would you describe it to them?
So I would describe this as a neighborhood block party on steroids. You don't have the bouncy house or anything, but block parties are about closing off the block, getting to know your neighbors, having fun together, and this is exactly what it was. People were going out, family-friendly, teenagers, older people. I mean, everybody was interacting together. And when they're coming into the store, they were genuinely wanting to know more about what you did and just wanting to be more involved. Because on a normal basis, you know, you're going to work, you're coming back, you're really focused. Even if you come in, you're on a time crunch. Whereas this, it was like, got all the time in the world. So people really engaged at a level that they don't normally do. And we just got to interact with people on such a lot. And like Pamela said, 15,000 people, like that is a lot of people. And once again, it's the gift that keeps on giving, because those people got exposed to your business. If they like it, they're coming back, they're bringing their friends from out of town, because once again, they want to show their neighborhood and what they're proud of to people that are visiting, and even tourists as well. They were like, what is this? This is amazing. And I was like, yeah, it's only like this Sunday, so you came at a very good time to visit Milwaukee Avenue. But the fun factor of it is definitely like a block party. And there wasn't, once again, there wasn't a lot of stuff to distract. It was really about the businesses and the neighborhood. But the activations that Pamela and her team put together every single time were very curated and very well done. And that supported, I think, the success of this even more. And also, she gave opportunity for other small businesses to be on the side streets to block the cars, but at the same time, if they are not on Milwaukee, to get exposure for their businesses that were in the neighborhood as well. So that's another thing. It's not even just about the businesses on Milwaukee, is she utilized those businesses to close off those side streets and give them exposure to all those people walking through that may not have heard of them. So this is the most amazing marketing for a small business you can ask for, and it's free. You don't have to pay for it at all.
Thanks. So similar question to Dave, but from the administrative side, if a different ward or a different chamber of commerce came to your office and said, we thought this is a cool idea, we would like to do this, please help us, how would that conversation go?
Well, I think like I had said, the way that this really came together was through the partnerships with the Chamber of Commerce and the local businesses. That, to me, is sort of the first question. Who are the community partners, and how do we all get on the same page to make this happen? That was really critical. It's not this, you talked about Ciclovia in Colombia, Bogota. Like, that is actually a federal program done all throughout the country. It started in one city at one corridor, but it is now a federal initiative. That's not the case here for this type of event. So it really does require the partnership with the local chamber, an SSA, or a key community organization or set of businesses. So I think that's the first thing. And the reason this was such a successful event is because, as Pam mentioned, you've got multiple L stations. You've got a density of residential and local businesses that it just makes sense. There's already people out there. And this type of event can be a little more challenging, I think, if you don't have that level of density of residents and businesses or transit access, bike access, all of that.
Thanks. So Pam, a little bit earlier, you mentioned that your office was inundated this year with questions about the program and inundated when the program was announced last year. Within those questions, did you see any skepticism up front?
Absolutely.
Go on.
I think mostly they were just hypothetically, because they'd only seen Wicker Park Fest before, and they're like, wait, you're going to do a pedestrian takeover of the street? Why are people going to want to just come out and walk? And I was like, well, I mean, I think people are going to like the idea, and all the businesses are pretty excited about it. So was there skepticism? Yes, absolutely. And honestly, I'm going to share one piece that I haven't talked about yet that I think was super important from our office. Being that we see all these different events across the world and unfortunate things that happen at those events, because there are people with very bad intentions, unfortunately. And here we are talking about closing Milwaukee Avenue, the same footprint of Wicker Park Fest, with 15,000 people in the street, and what could possibly go wrong? So yeah, that was the other part of the skepticism from my staff is, type 3 barricade's cute, but it takes all of one hand to push the entire barricade out of the way. So a vehicle is obviously a lethal weapon at that point. So Amanda was mentioning earlier, we invited all of these businesses that weren't part of Milwaukee Avenue to participate on the side streets. There's 8 different side streets plus an alley. So strategically in my mind, I was thinking, yes, I want to give these businesses exposure, but I was mostly thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want a vehicle to come barreling into our event. I heard a over there. Yeah, it was really skeptical from our office. We're like, how do we keep people safe in a pedestrian takeover, super low maintenance? How can we keep this event moving in a way that people don't maybe notice? And that's where we really brought in all of these side vendors. But that was the biggest skepticism from our office was, how do we do this efficiently, safely, and most affordably?
Well, I'll add that I felt skeptical. Like, I remember, like, oh my gosh, like as the final part of the street closed, and they're up there, and like, there's like some like gym like up on the like 1700 block, and they were towing the last few cars, and it's just empty, and I'm like,
What have we done?
Ooh, this is either the greatest thing that I've done or the absolute worst thing that I've done. And it all worked out, but like going back to the barricades, I want to piggyback off of that because it's finding the right balance, because there had been other folks who had said, well, you should like post up garbage trucks like at the on Damon and at Ashland to really make sure nobody can get through. Okay. But like, yeah, but like, but like at that, we were thinking about like what is the tone that conveys at the same time. And I remember I was at lunch with Alderman Bennett Lawson in Wrigleyville, and he was like, "Have you heard about meridian barriers?" And I was like, "Tell me more." And yeah, right. Like there are these little guys. They're like, 3 feet tall, yellow, but like you really would take some energy to move those. And CPD was able to order them. We got them at Damon and at Ashland. Worked like a charm. And I think we would add them to the Walcott and Paulina entrances if we can, because it makes room for the folks you want coming through and not the folks that you don't want. It was perfect, the sweet spot.
Thank you. So I want to say that I've lived in and around Wicker Park for about 10 years, so this meant a lot to me. It was really exciting to walk up and down a street that was closed. It was really exciting to bump into a number of friends, including some people in this room. So I think it meant a lot to the neighborhood, and I think many people in that area are really looking forward to more of the same in the future. So at this point, we've got about 20 minutes left. I'd like to open the floor to questions from the audience. I saw in the back middle, hand first. Give.
Yeah, we are expanding the hours. Yay! Yay, interns! I will say, Chicago police, without them, we can't start the street closure and we can't reopen the street. And I'm going to follow back onto your question, but the very first event that we did, as we were reopening the street at 6 p.m. on the very first one last August, we are trying to get everyone up onto the sidewalk safely, right? The end of the event is the hardest part, like getting everyone out of the street, and we had a very strategic plan in place to reopen southbound and northbound traffic on Milwaukee Avenue with a trickle pace, like very slow. A cop car was in front, a car was behind, and they kind of set the tone for how we were going to reopen that street, which felt, again, very skeptical, very terrifying. But with that, there were all these people that just kept walking back down to the street, and these guys yell out, of course, people have different opinions on the police. You know what they said. I don't need to say it. They said that. And I happened to be standing right there, and I did say something, and I said, you realize without them, this event wouldn't have even happened. And he looks at me and goes, sorry, ma'am. I didn't think I looked like a ma'am, so that really took offense to me. But yes, we'll be staying open later. The goal is to be there until at least 6 p.m. for both August and September. When we get to October, this is the tricky point. We never know what the weather's going to be like. The sun goes down sooner, the temperature drops. And realistically, October, when we were looking at that Placer creepy AI report, we actually saw that people naturally started leaving the event earlier in October. So I think we're going to hold the 5 p.m. close there, but we are moving the end time just a little bit later for both August and September because we too want people to stay out and patronize the businesses, specifically the restaurants, with their whole fam, their whole gang, their whole family, whoever came out with them to the event that day. And I'm so glad you made it.
Yeah, I saw the jacket and the...
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kevin Peralta. I'm a planner at CTA, and one of the questions that I have is more so for Amanda. Some of the projects that we're doing at CTA involve either removing parking or limiting through traffic. So my question to you is, given that parking is a major concern for a lot of small businesses, how do you reconcile that? How do you convince these small businesses that removing parking isn't the end of the world?
That is definitely a loaded question because being in there for 25 years, parking has been a huge issue, always. Because we have a lot of customers that are coming from suburbs and they're like, I was driving around for an hour, I almost gave up and I didn't come. So it does affect greatly small businesses with the parking. So removing extra parking, I think would really affect small businesses. Making it as easy as possible for people to just even drop off stuff is very helpful as well. But people don't realize like parking really does affect, because I even was talking to a local restaurant, Taksim. He's been there for a really long time, over 15 years. And once again, he's saying, I have a lot of people that come from the suburbs to come at my restaurant, and we had a parking ban at 10 p.m. and he's like, I lost all those customers. And he's like, it really hurt my business to the point where like I didn't know if I can continue. So anything parking related, I do believe and would hope that they would take into consideration small businesses, or at the very least give them a voice to explain how this would impact and to what degree. Because even to me, I don't have a restaurant. I have a business that closes down around 7, 8, so it didn't affect me, but it affected the restaurant. So having a broader view as well of different small businesses before you move initiatives like that forward would be very, very helpful. And if they close down because of it, then you lose kind of what makes that neighborhood special. So I would hope that would be the goal, is to bring them into the conversation.
Hunter?
I guess one thing that I've seen with other places that have done these temporary street closures is because they become so popular and folks want more and more, that they end up becoming a permanent installation where the street, becomes pedestrianized. Is that something that, I know we're talking in the future, and maybe we'll talk more about it in March for La Spata, but I guess for CDOT and for the businesses, has that been something discussed? Would that be? I would be excited about it. I want to be able to go to Milwaukee and do that all the time.
I'll keep my answer super short. I think that can absolutely work in certain neighborhoods. I think historic Milwaukee Avenue with all the bus lanes and all the through traffic would be a tough sell. But I definitely think that works in a lot of different neighborhoods on smaller retail corridors for sure.
I would like to go into this. Like, why did we pick Sunday, for example, for MMoM Milwaukee? We picked it because it's usually the slowest day we had heard from most businesses. So like, how do you, again, like flip that script? It was all about flipping the script physically, spatially, economically. I would say from an infrastructure perspective, if we were to like even do this for like more Sundays in the year, it would take a level of infrastructure adjustment that goes beyond what we can handle locally speaking, So that would be the challenge. It's not so much a no as it is a how. Yeah.
Pie in the sky, how would you describe those infrastructure improvements?
I think that'd be a CDOT master plan.
And like here's another thing that I know, because we've talked about this. The plan is, and if you live on the northwest side, you've been seeing Milwaukee Avenue being reconstructed starting west, going towards downtown. Well, the next stretch of this comes into the first ward, like when we're looking at Logan to Western, moving further down, like if there are ways that, I know in Logan Square, we're talking even now about moving from concrete protected bike lanes to raised sidewalk level bike lanes. What does it look like to have infrastructure that promotes more frequent pedestrianization? Again, like going back to like logistical efficiency, how do we make it easier? That's the question. But I think that's a little ways down the road kind of question.
Because I had a small business initiative event at my store, and a lot of the businesses were really upset about it being a permanent thing, because we do rely on the cars coming through that corridor, and it could really negatively impact us to have that as a permanent thing. And that was voiced very, very clearly, because we need those cars to be able to park and come in, get something, and leave, and not have to once again go and walk around, especially for a lot of kind of restaurants that's just like quick pickup and leave. So from what I heard at the meeting, that was something that a lot of small businesses were really scared of, and this is why they were hesitant to maybe move forward with it and expand it, because that could really have a lot of implications for different things, for just not having cars. And the nice thing is we already have like a lot of people walking on the sidewalks. It's a busy corridor, like we mentioned, but that is something to think about, because I didn't even realize until I had this meeting with the businesses, and they kind of went down into the nitty-gritty of how it would impact. So I really like the fact that we're doing these on selective days. Also, too, I think when you make it a little bit more exclusive, people really come and take advantage. If it was a permanent thing, I don't know if it would have the impact that it has now. So that's also something to consider.
Okay, in the front.
Brent Selby from Cambridge Systematics, also a ward resident. I live right by Milwaukee and Noble. Thanks for the overhead light, by the way. People stop blasting through that. So my question about this is, David mentioned that, of course, Wicker Park, Milwaukee, this is exactly the place where this is going to work. And maybe there's some other obvious ones like Wells and Old Town. And where do you think it might work or not work? Or are there any places that you think that may be less obvious but really a good opportunity for it?
This has a kind of like an ice bucket challenge kind of vibe to it. But like, hey, I think 18th Street in Pilsen would be awesome. I think, is it 25th or 26th in Little Village? 20, yeah. Like, I think that would be awesome. There's neighborhoods on the north, I think about Broadway, I think about Clark Street, like I think about Andersonville, like the residential, the small business density is kind of a comparable kind of energy, and I just know that those communities would pick it up. So like, if we're filming this, like 48th Ward, 40th Ward, 25th, 22nd, this is the shout out moment.
I think there's definitely some key ingredients, that have to be there for this to really be a success and to kind of match what happened on Milwaukee. But I think there are a surprisingly high number of places where this really would work. And part of that makes me think about during the height of COVID, we had the Shared Street program where we did basically these temporary installations for a couple of years where we, in some cases, restricted car access completely, but a lot of it was like very heavily traffic calmed and allowed people to walk and bike in the street and sort of gather, in the whole width of the public right of way. And there were some that we did in places that I was a little bit skeptical of, or unsure of what the usage would be, and they were very popular and they worked out very well. So I think there are key ingredients, like I said, a level of density, access, local business, partnership. But I think there's a street in every neighborhood where this type of thing can work. I won't call out any wards.
You could. Yeah, right here.
Hi, so I have a similar question to that. I live on the North Lake side, and I've seen a lot of businesses affected by the Red Purple Modernization Project. It's a large-scale infrastructure project from CTA. CTA, it's a great project if you're in the room. But it did hurt a lot of local businesses, and I know just near me, I saw a lot. So I'm curious if there's any conversations with the CTA of like transit-oriented development around these to activate those areas, to encourage small businesses, any conversations that may be going on, or are CDOT interested in kind of using your resources to make sure that some of those disruptions can be bolstered to recovery?
So I'm going to pretend that I'm Alderwoman Lenny Mana-Hoppenworth for a moment, and she'd say, that's exactly what we're doing. Like, I mean, the whole like upzoning along Broadway as like mixed as that was received is designed to promote more vibrant transit-oriented development along that corridor. I mean, the fact that like it was all B1 zoning, you cannot open a full-service restaurant with B1 zoning. Like, so the whole move to like B3, C1 zoning there, -3, -5, like it creates the conditions for that kind of development. And again, it provides stability and predictability for folks who want to open those businesses, who want to do more development there. And I think in the long term, like when we look back on that initiative 5-8 years from now, we will see just how wildly successful that endeavor was.
Real quick, Daniel, for those of us who don't have the zoning code memorized,
Sorry.
could you describe in plain terms what it means to change from one type of development to another and how that benefits other residents or small businesses in the area?
Okay, so every like category of zoning builds on itself in terms of permitted economic uses, from like B1, which is the fewest that you can do, B2, B3, C1, C2, C3, up like that. So like when you have a corridor that is solely essentially like B1 zoning, it is self-limiting in the types of businesses that people can open there. When you go to essentially like B3, C1 zoning, which is kind of like the sweet spot of it all, in my personal opinion, then you're opening up like a whole realm of economic opportunity. There's folks who have my job who sometimes like keep zoning low from the perspective of then if you do want to open a restaurant or like, God forbid, like a bar, then like you have to go to them for their permission. And you can do that, but requiring that requires like another 4 to 6 months of process at the least. So I think if you're willing to trade control for growth and opportunity, I think that is a wise trade-off almost every time.
So I think we have time for one more. Yeah, Andrea?
Thank you. I'm also a resident of First Ward, and I
did
I
not
volunteered.
stack the room.
I volunteered on the October one and spent more money than I expected to that weekend, so it works. Some of the like long-term infrastructure for making this happen. Have there been any changes to the permit to like allow people to do this more easily or make it more clear? And secondarily, has CDOT ever thought about like installing the like metal bollards that like lift up from the street that could then be like turned on for an event and then put back down, or something like that where it's more permanent and then I don't have to put together the gates? Yeah. Thank
We do appreciate you helping to put them together. So the bollards that she's talking about, particularly like since this room seems flush with First Ward residents, if you ever go to Western and Bloomingdale or even over by Churchill Park, you'll see these bollards that along the 606 were put in place to prevent cars from driving up on the trail, which, believe it or not, was a huge problem back in 2019 and 2020. It was crazy. I think that's a discussion that we're not at yet. I'd say from a permitting perspective, knowing what is going to be asked of us, we're much better prepared to answer those questions this time and have a permit which, like, we're not waiting till like 2 weeks before the event to see if it gets approved. Like that was the place we were at last year. Like, and so we're at a much better place in terms of understanding what's going to be asked. Like, I mean, could and should the city create a specific permit for pedestrianization events? Would that be a really interesting ordinance or policy? I think it sure would.
We'll wait till March to answer.
Well, on that note, please everyone give a big round of applause to all of our panelists.